My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 77 years old. I don't know exactly why I'm recording this now. Maybe because the house feels different at night. Quieter than it used to. Or maybe because when you reach this age, you start to notice how many things are already finished. There are rooms in this house that don't get used anymore. The second bedroom hasn't been opened in months. I walk past it sometimes and pause, but I don't turn the handle. I suppose that says something about me. I've always chosen the quiet instead. I was born in 1949, small town, 2 streets, 1 grocery store, a church with a bell that rang every Sunday whether anyone showed up or not. My father didn't talk much. My mother filled the space for him, but even she knew when not to ask questions. In our house, silence wasn't strange. It was normal, safe. If something hurt, you swallowed it. If something bothered you, you waited. If something felt too big to say out loud, you let it pass and hoped it would shrink on its own. I got good at that. In school, I was the boy who listened more than he spoke. Teachers liked me, said I was steady. I don't remember ever raising my voice. I don't remember arguing. I remember watching other boys fight over things that seemed important to them and thinking, it's easier not to. That thought followed me into adulthood. I met Helen when I was 26. She had a laugh that made people turn their heads. Not loud exactly, but alive. She talked with her hands. She filled the air. The first time she told me she loved me, I paused too long before saying it back. She noticed. She always noticed. We married anyway. She said my calm balanced her. I believed that. I thought being steady was enough. There were moments, small ones, where she would look at me across the kitchen table and say, "What are you thinking?" And I would shrug, or say, "Nothing much." It wasn't that there was nothing there. There was always something, but putting it into words felt risky. What if I said it wrong? What if it made things heavier? So I chose the quiet. We had 1 daughter, Emily. She inherited her mother's eyes and her way of filling a room. When she was little, she used to climb into my lap and ask me questions about everything. Why the sky changed color, why people cried at weddings, why some days felt longer than others. I answered the simple ones. The bigger ones I let drift. When she was 13, she started closing her bedroom door more often. I'd stand in the hallway sometimes and consider knocking. I could hear music playing, sometimes crying. I'd raise my hand to the wood and then lower it again. I told myself she needed space. Maybe she did, or maybe she needed her father to risk the awkwardness of a conversation. I remember one evening very clearly. She was 16. We were in the car. It was raining. Helen was working late. Emily stared out the window and said very quietly, "Dad, do you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere?" The wipers moved back and forth. I kept my eyes on the road. I said, "That's just part of growing up." It sounded reasonable, calm. She nodded, turned back to the window. That was the end of it. I think about that sentence more than I should. There were other moments when Helen would get frustrated and say, "I can't always be the only one saying what's wrong." I would sit there,
hands folded, trying to keep the peace by not adding to it. I thought silence prevented damage. I didn't realize it could create its own. Years went by like that. Not dramatic, no shouting, no broken plates, just spaces where words should have been. When Helen got sick, it happened quietly too. A cough that didn't leave, a tiredness that didn't lift, doctor appointments, tests, a waiting room with magazines no one reads. She asked me once, sitting on the edge of the bed, "Are you scared?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I was terrified of losing her, that the idea of waking up in this house without her laugh felt like standing at the edge of something I couldn't see the bottom of. Instead, I said, "We'll handle it." She looked at me for a long time after that, not angry, just searching. I'm not sure what she found.
Helen passed on a Tuesday morning. The light was coming in through the curtains, soft, ordinary. After the hospital, after the paperwork, after the casseroles people drop off because they don't know what else to do, I came home and sat in the living room. It was the first time the quiet didn't feel safe. It felt loud. Emily stood in the doorway that evening. She was in her 40s by then, lines near her eyes that hadn't been there before. She said, "Dad, you don't have to do this alone." I nodded. I said, "I'm fine." It was almost automatic. She stayed a few days, tried to talk, told me stories about her job, about her son, about the way the world felt different now. I listened. I always listened well. But when she would circle back to me, "What are you feeling?" I would look down at my hands. There was so much there by then. Regret, fear, loneliness so sharp it surprised me. But the habit of quiet is hard to break at 74. She left on a Sunday afternoon, hugged me longer than usual. I felt her shoulders shake a little. I patted her back and said, "Drive safe." That's what I gave her. The years since have been slow. I wake up early, make coffee, sit in the same chair by the window. The neighborhood has changed. New families, different cars, children I don't know riding bikes past the house where my daughter once learned to balance without training wheels. Sometimes I replay certain moments like old film. The rainy car ride, the edge of the hospital bed, the hallway outside Emily's teenage bedroom. I don't remember arguments. I remember absences, conversations that almost happened, questions that hovered and then disappeared. I used to think that staying quiet meant staying kind, that not pressing into uncomfortable things was a form of protection. I believed that if I didn't add weight to a moment, it would pass more gently. But there are weights that grow heavier in silence. Last year, Emily and I had dinner at her house. My grandson cleared the table. We sat alone for a minute. She looked at me the same way her mother used to, like she was waiting for something. She said, "Dad, I never really knew what you felt about anything." Not accusing, just stating it. I opened my mouth, closed it again. At 76, words don't come any easier than they did at 26. If anything, they feel more fragile. I said, "I felt more than I showed." She nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "I just wish I'd seen it." That sentence has been sitting with me ever since. I chose the quiet instead, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid that speaking might crack something open I couldn't fix. Now I sit in this house, and the quiet is everywhere. It fills the kitchen, the hallway, the empty bedroom. It's what I practiced my whole life, and I suppose I got very good at it. Sometimes late at night, I say things out loud just to hear them. I say Helen's name. I say Emily's. I say I was scared. I say I didn't know how. The walls don't answer, but it feels different than holding it in. I don't know how much time I have left. Doctors speak carefully at this age. They don't promise much. I can feel my body slowing in ways that aren't temporary. There's a part of me that wonders what my life would have sounded like if I had chosen differently, if I had knocked on the door, if I had said, "Yes, I'm scared," if I had told my daughter that belonging is something we build together, not something we wait to feel. But that's not the life I lived. This is the one. If you're still listening, thank you for sitting in this with me. You don't have to say anything. Sometimes just staying is enough.